The sound of skateboard wheels grinding against concrete echoed through Riverside Park when the first police cruiser screamed into the parking lot, followed by three more. Officer Martinez's radio crackled with urgent dispatch codes as he leaped from his vehicle, hand instinctively moving to his weapon. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the skate park, where 6 teenagers had been practicing tricks just moments before. Their laughter now replaced by confused shouts and the thunderous approach of heavy boots on asphalt. "Get down, everyone, get down now!" The commanding voice sliced through the air like a blade, causing 17-year-old Marcus Johnson to stumble off his skateboard mid-trick. His water bottle flew from his backpack, clattering across the concrete with a hollow sound that seemed to echo forever in the sudden silence. The other teens froze, their faces reflecting a mixture of confusion and growing terror as armed officers surrounded the perimeter of the skate park. 30 minutes earlier, the same space had been filled with nothing more dangerous than adolescent dreams and the sweet scent of summer freedom. Marcus had been teaching his younger sister Keisha how to drop into the bowl, his patient voice encouraging her through each attempt. "Remember, it's all about commitment. You can't hesitate at the edge, or you'll fall backward." His friends Jake, Miguel, Aisha, and Danny surrounded them, offering tips and cheering every small victory. The skate park had become their sanctuary, a place where homework stress and family pressures dissolved into the rhythm of wheels on concrete. Keisha, barely 14 and still finding her confidence on 4 wheels, had managed her first successful drop-in when the police sirens began their approach. "Did you see that, Marcus? I actually did it." Her joy was infectious, spreading through the group like sunlight breaking through clouds. Marcus had pulled out his phone to record her next attempt, wanting to capture the moment for their parents, when the first officer appeared at the park's entrance with his weapon drawn. The transformation from celebration to nightmare happened in seconds. "That's him! That's the one with the gun!" Officer Davis shouted, pointing directly at Marcus, whose only crime had been being the tallest black teenager in a group of diverse friends. The misidentification would later haunt the officer's dreams. But in that moment, adrenaline and Karen Henderson's hysterical 911 call drove his actions with devastating precision. Karen Henderson sat in her silver SUV, parked across the street from the skate park, her manicured fingers gripping the steering wheel as she watched the police response unfold. She had made the call 20 minutes earlier from the same position, her voice shaking with fabricated urgency as she told the dispatcher, "There's a black male, maybe 16 or 17, and he's got a gun. He's threatening the other kids at the skate park. I can see it clearly from here. Please hurry. Someone's going to get hurt." The 911 operator had pressed for details, trying to maintain protocol despite the caller's apparent distress. "Ma'am, can you describe the weapon? Are shots being fired?" Karen's pause had been calculated, her eyes narrowing as she watched Marcus help Keisha with her helmet strap. "It looks like a pistol. He's waving it around, pointing it at people. The other kids look scared. This is Riverside Park on Maple Street. Please, just send someone now." What Karen had actually witnessed was Marcus holding his water bottle, gesturing animatedly as he explained skateboarding techniques to his friends. But 18 months of watching these teenagers use her park had built a resentment that twisted every innocent interaction into a perceived threat. She had called the city council twice to complain about noise, filed reports about loitering, and even suggested installing cameras to monitor the suspicious activities at the skate park. Now, as 6 police officers treated her neighbor's children like armed criminals, Karen felt a sick satisfaction watching the chaos unfold. She adjusted her rearview mirror to get a better view, her phone already recording what she planned to post on the neighborhood Facebook group with a caption about finally getting action on the crime problem. Back at the skate park, Marcus tried to process what was happening as officers screamed conflicting commands. "Show me your hands. Get on the ground. Drop the weapon." He raised his empty palms high above his head, his voice cracking as he tried to speak. "I don't have a weapon. We're just skating. Please. My sister is here." But Officer Davis had already committed to his approach, his training kicking in as he saw what his mind had been primed to see. The tackle came from behind, blindsiding Marcus as he knelt with his hands raised. His head struck the concrete edge of the bowl with a sickening crack that would replay in his friend's nightmares for months to come. Keisha's scream pierced the air as her brother's body went limp, blood beginning to pool beneath his head. "Marcus. Oh my God. Marcus." Jake Chen had the presence of mind to start recording with his phone, his hands shaking as he captured the officers restraining an unconscious teenager while his sister sobbed nearby. The footage would later show the exact moment Officer Martinez discovered the weapon that had triggered the violent response, a blue plastic water bottle with Marcus's school logo, lying 10 feet away from the expanding pool of blood. "That's not a gun," Officer Martinez whispered, his face paling as the reality of their mistake became undeniable. The radio chatter that had been urgent and aggressive just moments before turned confused and defensive. Dispatch was already asking for clarification on the situation, their voices betraying the first hints of the bureaucratic nightmare that was about to engulf the entire department. The ambulance arrived within minutes, paramedics rushing to stabilize Marcus, while his friends formed a protective circle around Keisha. Aisha Williams, the most composed of the group despite her own trauma, managed to call Marcus's mother from her shaking hands. "Mrs. Johnson, there's been an accident at the skate park. Marcus is hurt. The police. They thought. Just please come quickly." Diana Johnson was teaching her evening nursing class when Aisha's call came through. The drive to Riverside Park became a blur of traffic lights and desperate prayers as she tried to comprehend how her honor student son had ended up in an ambulance. She arrived to find Keisha wrapped in a police-issued blanket, still crying inconsolably, while officers were already beginning to construct the official narrative that would justify their response. The scene at the hospital emergency room was controlled chaos. Marcus lay unconscious on a gurney, his head wrapped in gauze as doctors worked to assess the extent of his injuries. The CT scan would reveal a severe concussion and hairline skull fracture that would require surgery and weeks of recovery. Diana held her son's hand while Keisha curled up in the chair beside his bed, both of them struggling to understand how an afternoon of skateboarding had become a medical emergency. Meanwhile, Jake's footage was already circulating online. The video showed everything: the excessive police response, the violent takedown of an unarmed teenager, and the moment officers realized their catastrophic mistake. Within hours, the hashtag #ChashJusticeForMarcus was trending locally, and news crews were setting up outside the hospital where he lay fighting for consciousness. The first reporter to interview Diana Johnson was Sarah Chen, Jake's older sister and a journalism student at the local college. Her questions were gentle but probing, designed to capture the human cost of the afternoon's events. "Mrs. Johnson, can you tell us about Marcus? What kind of young man is he?" Diana's voice was steady, despite her exhaustion. "Marcus is everything a mother could hope for. He's an honor student. He volunteers at the community center, and he loves his sister more than anything in this world. He was just teaching her to skateboard." The interview, broadcast on the evening news and shared thousands of times on social media, began to shift public opinion in Marcus's favor. Viewers saw not a dangerous criminal, but a devoted brother whose only weapon had been kindness and patience. The contrast between Karen's 911 call and the reality of Marcus's character became impossible to ignore, sparking conversations about racial profiling and the dangers of false reporting. Karen Henderson, meanwhile, was dealing with her own growing discomfort as the story gained traction. Her neighbors began asking pointed questions about her role in the incident, and several people remembered her previous complaints about the teenagers at the skate park. The social media post she had planned to make never materialized as the narrative spun beyond her control, painting her not as a concerned citizen, but as the architect of a near tragedy. Detective Lisa Rodriguez was assigned to investigate the incident 3 days after Marcus regained consciousness. Her interview with Karen took place in the Henderson family's immaculate living room, where every surface gleamed with the obsessive cleanliness of someone trying to maintain control over an uncontrollable world. Mrs. Henderson, I need to understand exactly what you saw that prompted your 911 call. Karen's story had evolved in the retelling, each version slightly different from the last as she tried to maintain credibility while justifying her actions. He was definitely holding something that looked like a gun, the way he was pointing it at the other children. I felt I had to act to protect them. Her voice carried the same artificial urgency she had used with the 911 operator. But Detective Rodriguez had seen the footage and knew the truth. Mrs. Henderson, we've reviewed the security footage from the parking lot across the street. It shows a clear view of the skate park during the time you made your call. At no point does anyone appear to be holding anything resembling a weapon. The teenager you identified was holding a water bottle, and he was helping his younger sister with her skateboard. The detective's words hung in the air, like an accusation waiting to be acknowledged. The revelation that there was security footage sent a visible shock through Karen's carefully composed demeanor. She had not known about the camera mounted on the utility pole, and its existence destroyed any remaining credibility her story might have had. I was sure I saw. From my angle, it looked. Her stammering attempts at justification only deepened her legal jeopardy as Detective Rodriguez continued taking notes. The investigation revealed a disturbing pattern of behavior that went far beyond a single mistaken 911 call. Karen had been systematically targeting the teenagers who used the skate park, filing noise complaints during legal hours, calling police about suspicious activity that consisted of nothing more than young people enjoying a public space, and even trying to have the park's operating hours reduced to exclude after-school time. Miguel Santos, one of Marcus's skating partners, told Detective Rodriguez about the confrontations that had escalated over the previous months. She would drive by and take pictures of us, then post them online with comments about how we were up to no good. She called us thugs and gangsters for just being teenagers. When we tried to talk to her, she would threaten to call the police. The pattern of harassment painted Karen not as a concerned neighbor, but as someone whose prejudices had finally crossed into criminal behavior. The community response was swift and decisive. A GoFundMe campaign for Marcus's medical expenses raised over $50,000 in the first week, far exceeding the family's needs, and allowing them to establish a fund for other victims of police violence. The local NAACP chapter organized peaceful demonstrations demanding accountability, while the skate park became a gathering place for supporters leaving flowers, cards, and messages of solidarity. Marcus's recovery was slow and painful, complicated by post-concussion syndrome that affected his memory and concentration. The teenager, who had been at the top of his class, struggled to complete simple homework assignments, and the headaches made it difficult for him to focus on anything for more than a few minutes at a time. The doctors assured Diana that the effects would likely be temporary, but the uncertainty added another layer of anxiety to an already traumatic situation. Keisha stopped skating altogether after the incident, her skateboard gathering dust in the corner of her room, like a reminder of innocence lost. She started having nightmares about police sirens and refused to leave the house without her mother. The trauma counselor explained that children often blame themselves for adult violence they witness, and Keisha had convinced herself that if she hadn't asked Marcus to teach her, none of this would have happened. The police department's internal investigation moved slowly, hampered by union protections and the natural tendency of institutions to protect themselves. Officer Davis was placed on administrative leave pending the outcome, while his colleagues struggled with the knowledge that their colleague's mistake had nearly killed a child. The department offered to pay Marcus's medical expenses as a gesture of goodwill, but the family's attorney advised them that accepting the money might complicate future legal proceedings. 3 weeks after the incident, new evidence emerged that would prove to be the case's turning point. A teenage witness came forward with cell phone footage taken from a different angle, showing Karen Henderson in her SUV making the 911 call while clearly having an unobstructed view of the skate park. The video captured her watching Marcus help his sister for several minutes before making the call, destroying any remaining claim that the report was made in good faith. The footage also revealed something else that sent shockwaves through the investigation. Karen could be seen laughing after ending her call, apparently amused by the chaos she had set in motion. The image of a woman finding entertainment in a teenager's suffering became a symbol of everything wrong with false reporting and racial profiling, galvanizing public opinion against her in ways that previous evidence had not achieved. District Attorney Michael Thompson reviewed the evidence on a Friday afternoon, his office silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of traffic. The case against Karen Henderson was solid, filing a false police report, reckless endangerment, and potentially hate crime charges, depending on how aggressive his office wanted to be. The political pressure to prosecute was enormous, but Thompson also knew that Karen's defense attorney would argue she genuinely believed she saw a weapon. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday, at 10 in the morning. Karen Henderson sat beside her attorney in the defendant's chair, her previous confidence replaced by the hollow-eyed look of someone whose world had collapsed around her. The courtroom was packed with supporters for Marcus's family, their presence a tangible reminder of the community impact of her actions. Judge Patricia Williams presided over the hearing with the careful neutrality required by her position. But those who knew her could see the controlled anger in her eyes as she reviewed the evidence. The security footage played on the courtroom monitor, showing Karen's deliberate observation, followed by her false report, the police response, and the terrible moment when Marcus's head struck the concrete. Marcus himself attended the hearing against his doctor's recommendations, still suffering from headaches, but determined to face the woman whose lie had nearly killed him. He sat with his family in the front row, his presence a living reminder of the stakes involved in the proceedings. When Karen glanced back at him during a recess, their eyes met for just a moment, and whatever she saw there made her look away immediately. The defense attorney's strategy became clear during his opening statement. "My client made a mistake, Your Honor, but it was an honest mistake born of genuine concern for children's safety. Mrs. Henderson is a pillar of the community, a mother herself who thought she was protecting innocent young people from what appeared to be a dangerous situation." The argument rang hollow in the face of the evidence, but it represented Karen's last hope for avoiding criminal conviction. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. Detective Rodriguez testified about the pattern of harassment. The security footage expert explained the clear view Karen had of the skate park, and medical professionals detailed the extent of Marcus's injuries. Each piece of evidence built upon the last, creating an overwhelming picture of deliberate deception rather than honest mistake. The moment that sealed Karen's fate came when the prosecutor played the enhanced audio of her 911 call alongside the security footage. The courtroom could hear the calculated pauses in her voice, the way she escalated her story when pressed for details, and most damning of all, the sound of her engine starting before she had even finished the call, proof that she never intended to remain as a witness to the emergency she had reported. Judge Williams deliberated for less than an hour before returning to deliver her ruling. The evidence presented in this case reveals not a concerned citizen making a good faith report, but an individual who deliberately weaponized law enforcement against innocent children because of her personal prejudices. The defendant's actions directly resulted in serious bodily harm to a minor and trauma to multiple children who were simply enjoying a public park. The charges against Karen Henderson were comprehensive: filing a false police report, reckless endangerment, and criminal harassment. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in jail, suspended to 6 months with supervised probation, 500 hours of community service specifically working with youth programs, and a permanent ban from all city parks and recreational facilities. Additionally, she was ordered to pay restitution covering Marcus's medical expenses and funding improvements to the skate park where the incident occurred. The financial penalty proved to be particularly crushing for Karen's family. The medical bills alone exceeded $40,000. But the requirement to fund skate park improvements added another $60,000 to her debt. Her husband, who had remained silent throughout the legal proceedings, filed for divorce the week after sentencing, citing irreconcilable differences that were really differences about the kind of people they had become. Karen's community service assignment was carefully chosen to maximize both punishment and education. She would spend her hours working with inner-city youth programs, directly supervised by coordinators who specialized in addressing racial bias and community healing. The irony was not lost on anyone involved that the woman who had tried to remove teenagers from a public park would now be required to serve those same communities she had tried to harm. The news of Karen's sentencing sparked celebration at the skate park, where a growing memorial of flowers, artwork, and messages of support had grown around the spot where Marcus had fallen. The teenagers who had witnessed the assault returned gradually, their healing process intertwined with their determination to reclaim the space that had been violated by adult hatred. Miguel organized afternoon skating sessions that became informal therapy groups where young people processed their trauma together. Marcus's recovery accelerated after the hearing, as if the official acknowledgement of the injustice had lifted some invisible weight from his shoulders. His headaches became less frequent, his memory improved, and, most importantly, his smile returned. The first day, he successfully completed a full school assignment without assistance. He called Keisha into his room to share the victory. "I'm getting better, little sister. And you know what that means. It means I can teach you that kick turn you've been wanting to learn." Keisha's return to skateboarding was gradual, but determined. Her first time back at the park, she stayed close to Marcus, her eyes constantly scanning for potential threats. But as the weeks passed and the community support grew more visible, her confidence returned. The new security cameras installed as part of the settlement actually made her feel safer, knowing that any future incidents would be thoroughly documented. The skatepark improvements funded by Karen's restitution transformed the space into something more beautiful than it had ever been. New ramps, improved lighting, and expanded seating created an environment that welcomed families and spectators. A small plaque near the entrance read, "Dedicated to the power of truth and the resilience of youth," without specifically mentioning Marcus by name, but carrying his story in every word. Detective Rodriguez used the case as a teaching example in her training seminars about false reporting and implicit bias. Every 911 call carries the potential for life-changing consequences, she would tell new officers. When someone calls us, they're not just reporting an incident. They're potentially authorizing the use of force against another human being. We have to verify, question, and think critically about what we're being told, especially when the caller's description doesn't match what we observe upon arrival. Officer Davis never returned to active duty. His guilt over the incident consumed him, leading to depression and eventually an early retirement from law enforcement. He sent a letter to Marcus's family through their attorney, expressing his remorse and explaining how the case had changed his understanding of his role as a police officer. Diana Johnson kept the letter, not out of forgiveness, but as a reminder that good intentions were not enough to prevent harm when systems and biases aligned in dangerous ways. The ripple effects of the case extended far beyond the immediate participants. The city revised its 911 protocols to require more detailed questioning of callers reporting weapons, especially when the alleged perpetrator was described in racial terms. The police department implemented new training on de-escalation and verification before using force. The school district added curriculum about implicit bias and the dangers of false reporting to their social studies classes. Karen Henderson served her jail time quietly, her previous social media presence replaced by complete silence. The community service requirement proved to be genuinely transformative, forcing her to confront the humanity of the young people she had viewed as threats. Working with at-risk youth in supervised programs, she began to understand how her fear and prejudice had nearly destroyed an innocent family. Her supervised reflections, required as part of her probation, documented a slow but genuine change in perspective. A year after the incident, Marcus was selected to speak at the city council meeting about youth programming and public safety. Standing at the podium where his story had been discussed in the abstract months before, he represented himself and his community with grace that belied his 18 years. What happened to me could happen to any young person who looks like me, who comes from where I come from. But this community's response showed me that there are more good people than bad people, more people willing to fight for justice than to hide from difficult truths. The skate park that had been the site of trauma became a symbol of recovery and community strength. Marcus and Keisha became regular fixtures there again, their presence a testament to resilience and the power of refusing to be driven away by hatred. Other families began bringing their children to learn skateboarding, creating the diverse, multi-generational community space that the original designers had envisioned. On sunny afternoons, the sound of skateboard wheels on concrete once again echoes through Riverside Park, mixed with laughter and encouragement between friends. Marcus still teaches beginners, his patience and kindness unchanged by the violence he survived. Keisha has developed into an accomplished skater in her own right, her confidence rebuilt through practice and community support. The park bears no visible scars from the incident, but everyone who uses it understands that they are skating on sacred ground where truth prevailed over prejudice, and where a community chose love over fear. The case of Marcus Johnson versus Karen Henderson became a landmark in discussions about false reporting, racial profiling, and community healing. Legal scholars studied it for its comprehensive approach to restitution and rehabilitation. Social workers referenced it when designing programs to address bias-motivated crime. Most importantly, it became a story that parents told their children about the importance of standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult, and about the power of community solidarity to overcome individual hatred. In the end, Karen Henderson's attempt to remove black teenagers from her park had instead created a space that belonged more fully to everyone. Her lie had been intended to isolate and exclude, but the community's response had been to welcome and include. The skate park stood as proof that even the most destructive actions could be transformed into opportunities for growth, healing, and justice when people chose to respond with their highest values rather than their darkest fears. The final entry in Detective Rodriguez's case file noted that all restitution had been paid in full, all community service hours completed, and all parties involved had moved forward with their lives in positive directions. But the real measure of the case's resolution wasn't found in legal documents or financial settlements. It was found in the laughter of children playing safely in a public park, protected by a community that had learned to see past superficial differences to the shared humanity beneath. It was found in Marcus Johnson's smile as he taught another young person to overcome their fear and drop into the bowl for the first time, carrying forward the same patience and kindness that had made him a target, but ultimately proved to be his greatest strength.